maybe quickly on one on the strategies. I think that our previous experiences where we've achieved big changes has been through these big kind of coalitions, cross-sectoral. I think in the women's rights movement, that's been our experience to push legislation. It's really been through sort of coalitions, people coming together, having a diverse range of expertise, a cross-section of all the different social actors, trade unions, etc., working together. We need to learn lessons from some of the mistakes that we've made, including mistakes around who's excluded, who's included, what are the kinds of power dynamics, and how we replicate our own sort of more authoritarian, patriarchal regimes. But I think that we have experiences where we can think about how we've achieved change, and what we have been able to do for that, and can we do something specific in relation to what's going to be quite a big health challenge. In terms of the people with disabilities, so I think that we need to support all the different groups. That we have a lot of groups working on issues, associations of different interests, people with disabilities, sort of gender, informal sector, and so on and so forth. We do have to collectively support and amplify voices from outside of civil society. We have to be conscious and aware as we're going around, wherever we're coming from, of trying to collect and understand different situations and build relationships. So I think a lot of the networks and associations that represent various people with disabilities, and I know it's not one group, it's several, we need that sort of like understanding what other groups are doing and incorporating it in our work and supporting each other. The copy paste thing, data is a problem. We don't have the data we need to craft our own solutions. I have been looking to see, for example, the one thing for that which groups are going to be impacted. You don't have data around informal economies except those very broad figures, or 70%. But doing what? Why have we not been able to unpack who is where in the informal economy and map, and what are the kind of responses? And, there's better off informal economy and worse off. So the lack of interest and data means it's actually impossible to create solutions or responses that are well crafted towards that. Even in terms of our health statistics, if you try and we're supposed to have permanent influenza and respiratory illness, permanent monitoring surveillance systems, so that they can pick up any upticks of disease or pandemics. A pandemic could start here, it doesn't always come from outside. So we're supposed to have those surveillance systems. And in all honesty, I cannot find any data on what has been picked up around those issues and how it works. So even if we wanted to know whether there have been COVID cases from somewhere before, it would really just be a matter of looking through who has been dying of pneumonia. Do we have, that secondary data is supposed to support the testing that we can't do, but it's been filled in the gap. So that's one of the issues I think that we need to push governments on, and we ourselves need to participate in crafting better data for better adapted policy responses.
The sort of vision that Herbert was now rolling, for it to be, I share that vision, because it leads to a path towards an aggressive social policy first. In that social policy, a social protection program. So I think it's important, but for these things to happen in this crisis, we have that we need leadership. And a crisis moment, Masego, can be the birthplace of inspirational leadership. As we are seeing, there are a number of leaders who have emerged. The governor of New York, President Ramaphosa here. There are leaders who are emerging during this moment. But a crisis moment is also a point of consolidation, of authority figures posing as leaders, who then look at a crisis as a moment for political accumulation. We've seen in this region presidents, political figures who are taking sanitizers and put their picture on it and distribute to the poor. They are the ones who need to be sanitized. So in the absence of inspirational leadership, social policy programs that we're talking about don't occur. And that leads me to my second point, which is the rethinking development itself. We should see development as an enterprise, largely in favor of the poor, because that's the struggle we have. And development should not be seen as just multiplying the impact and quantum growth of economic growth. About how we distribute the benefits of growth so that we deal decisively with the triple burden of unemployment, poverty, inequality. In absence of that, you then have this lopsided exclusive development projects, which are now creating a fight between our societies among poor people and rich people. Poor people are afraid of hunger. Rich people are afraid of the virus. That's why you can't lock down poor people in Katutura and in Mashakeni and in the George Compound in Zambia. So we need a development program that really is about putting people first. The one Isabel talked about, we need new forms of revenue. I completely agree with that, because in a depressed macroeconomic environment that we have, there are limited resources for each state. There's limited fiscal space for each state to imagine what it can do. If you look at what Germany has done, the largest contribution of fiscal response, 2.2 trillion euros. 60% of Germany's economy is responding to COVID. In Zimbabwe, 600 million Zimbabwe dollars. Calculate that into dollars and into US dollars, you see what it means. To get new forms of revenue, we need to tackle the long-standing problem of debt so that there can be an effective debt moratorium, debt relief, or debt cancellation, so that you release money into the budget to respond to this pandemic we have. Sudan has 5 vice presidents. It has 4 ventilators. It is not going to respond on its small budget. Central African Republic, most of our countries. So we need to be joining campaigns for a new kind of international cooperation, a new kind of multilateralism, a new kind of leadership, and a kind of commitment to a human rights agenda for South Africa to get us to a new social protection program.
Okay, to start with, the pandemic itself has had a lot of impact, especially for women cross-border traders. And you know that Zambia being at a central point, you'll see that we have countries like Zimbabwe on the other side and Malawi, and also DRC, where most of the small-scale traders are actually, conducting businesses around different type of goods and services that they actually take in these particular countries. Now, Zambia is totally closed in terms of passenger moving to one point to the other, especially now. I think the last one was the Nakonde-Tunduma border, which actually was closed recently. Yeah, so we see that there's been a slow down in terms of cross-border trade, especially for small-scale traders, women that have been trading around the Comesa market in some certain areas in the border areas where they are no longer crossing to go to other countries to conduct business on a daily basis. What has been also most of the challenges, you find that these small-scale traders have got limited capital. And this particular pandemic has actually brought a lot of pressure in terms of, for them to try and access protective, equipment, especially the masks and the, other relevant, things they need to protect themselves, like the sanitizers in the areas where they are. And moreover, when you talk about Zambia has not experienced a total lockdown. This has also given a bit of a leverage for small-scale traders to change the type of business they're doing. Other than crossing the borders, they were trying to look around where they can actually continue to trade were within themselves, within the localities where they are. So we have actually also seen what actually happened 3 days ago at the DRC, the border between Zambia and the DRC, where in that particular country and Zambia had restricted passenger movements and the total lockdown of trade between DRC on the Kasumbalesa, apart from the cargo that is coming from other countries, like going to transit. But we saw the rebellion that most of the Congolese couldn't hold until they had to overcome the security and they forced themselves to come into Zambia. This actually shows how impact this particular COVID has on cross-border trade, because DRC and the people that are staying closer to borders with Zambia on the DRC, they really depend on Zambia to supply, commodities that are also coming from the other part of Southern Africa. We have actually seen that also government is trying to put in measures to try and see if they can bail out SMEs, but we don't know if this is actually going to have focus also on small-scale traders. And again, because the issues of the financial institutions where they're able to put, issues to do with collateral has been a challenge for most of small-scale traders, to have access to such type of facility. Zambian government has put a 10 billion Zambian kwacha. We hope, and we're trying to advocate, that we are able to, advocate that small-scale traders also should have, a facility so that they can access this particular, bailout, either at the moment or even in the post-COVID era.
I think you have touched on a very important problem that we're encountering as a continent, which is access to information. Because in as much as there's been a call for the continent to digitize and, catch up with the fourth industrial revolution, which is data, Internet of Things, etc., you'd realize that it leaves behind the most important sector, or the most important group of people, which is the young people, who are basically most of the time incapacitated, whether economically or educationally. So you'd realize that that's where entrepreneurship comes in and, sort of like tries to close in those gaps. So what I love about African entrepreneurship is that it has been able to take, technologies from abroad and adapt them, to our situation. I think the most common example would be M-Pesa, or mobile money, where it has played a critical role in, financially including everybody, to those who do not have access to internet. So right now, I feel like as entrepreneurs and as young people, we need to start looking at how to customize and to adapt the solutions that we have, to our own environment, right? So that, we make sure that we leave nobody behind. At this point in time, when we're talking about fake news, you'd realize that if you're to come to rural Zimbabwe, nobody knows what COVID-19 is. Nobody understands or even knows why they're supposed to be maybe self-isolating. And at the end of, on the other hand, also we have us in the urban areas who have access to internet and WhatsApp, and we have all these broadcast messages coming through to a point we don't even know which information is correct. So I feel like we as the young generation, we should be able to step in and come up with solutions that, one, help provide information to everyone in the most accessible way possible. Because I believe that the ideal technology is one that people can use, have access to, and is cheap for everyone to use, right? So as entrepreneurs and young people, we should be coming to a point where we are designing solutions that actually, help everyone or benefit everyone, not only people who can afford or people who have access to certain infrastructures. And secondly, as young people, we're at a stage in our lives where we have agency, we have the power, we are more exposed than the previous generations. So we need to come to a space whereby we are very active in, synthesizing and sifting the kind of information that we're either disseminating or engaging with. because whatever I engage with, I share it with my friends. So we need to come to a stage where we sift it and we synthesize it so that, we play a big part in disseminating information that is correct, information that, pushes us forward. Because at this rate at which we're going, I feel like those are some of the essential things that we need to start looking at as young people within the continent.
We share this ideology of producing food in an agroecological way. But our issues, what worry us now in Mozambique, it's the fact that our government have not, supported our own production, the production of small-scale farmers, and which is the majority. And now we feel it because, food imports have increased. The food that is being imported from South Africa, the prices have gone up 20%. So, and also it has been decreased. So there is not enough food for everyone. And you go to the supermarket, you'll see maize meal, sugar, and those are the things that the people are looking for. But the majority, the people, the vulnerable people, do not live on this imported food. And we see that this is an opportunity for the small-scale farmers to sell the produce. But also, we have the challenge that our production is not subsidized. So if there is no rain, also you can't get enough production because there is no irrigation. And also, UNAC as a movement, as a social movement, as small-scale farmers, producers, we have been promoting indigenous seeds, but this is not enough yet to feed the whole country. If we had our own, seeds, for example, would be now producing, but even the seeds, people now are lacking seeds. They go to the shops to buy seeds and there are no seeds because people are going to South Africa to buy seeds to sell to the small-scale farmers. But now they can't cross the border to South Africa. So we lack the basic things to produce. So that's why we say, as a movement, as UNAC, we have been discussing a lot, how can we use this opportunity, to channel, to produce better.
On the whole issue around hunger and food, there was quite a push for food parcels, but because many of our CBOs on the ground, that they were in feeding situations, feeding 300 to 400 families per day. That, of course, has increased almost double. And we then decided, when we launched the fund, not to go the food parcel mode, because it was all about dignity and not standing in a queue for food. So what did we do? With the COVID-19 relief fund, we made small community grants. So, and the grants was very clearly, here is some funding for food, because it's the first relief. And together with that, some funding for data and for taxi money. So we did that very intentionally because it was about dignity, and it was also to help women to be creative about what and how they would feed families. And I think that was a very important strategy for us in terms of that women felt we've spoken. You heard us. You took some time to listen, and you heard us. That was one of the things. Secondly, that communities, and especially our women on the ground, knew their communities very well. They knew the vulnerable families. They knew their children in the communities, and so that was that. But we felt their homes became also the hub for communities. And the safe spaces for communities where they can come to come and collect their food. And what I really liked in many of our communities, that it wasn't giving a parcel of food, that women came or families came or children came, and they came with their own pots, their own utensils, and it became a family meal at home, from home to home. And I think for me, that was a very important human strategy because amidst everything else, this was very important.
In terms of dealing with corruption, I think one of the things we have tried to do as the Citizens Initiative is to make sure that whatever we get, the donations from people, we demonstrate that it's possible to account for whatever you get. If you get $20, you need to account for that $20. And we should also go beyond just accounting, but also making sure that we get the value for the money we get, or the finances, or whatever the resources we get. We really need to emphasize on getting them the value for money. So in terms of, using technology then to make sure that we deal with corruption, there are huge opportunities. For example, you can actually track the progress on a particular project using social media. You can actually make sure that you quickly share information, because I think one of the things which allow people to get away with corruption is that people are not getting information timely. So if you can then quickly share information concerning funds, finances, projects, and everything, it will in many ways assist in dealing with corruption. So there's a huge opportunity in terms of technology. But also the broader political cultural change, we need to empower our communities to be able to understand that, it's not only about receiving help, but also they've got a huge role in making sure that they demand accountability from the office bearers. I will tell you that right now, as we speak, in Chimanimani, the part of Zimbabwe which was really affected by Cyclone Idai, there are people who are still staying in tents. But, the government is on record on several times saying that, we have received so much money. And if you then try to go and track to, okay, these guys, they've received so much money, what did they do with the money? You see, it becomes difficult. So beyond receiving help, beyond building resilience within communities, we also need to make sure that we empower them with the right tools, with the right knowledge, to be able then to demand accountability and track, resources.
The things that I went through during my entrepreneurship journey, from me graduating at the University of Botswana in political science, and then me jumping into entrepreneurship, the challenges that I've met, everything that I went through, for like 3 years, 2 years, I sat down and thought to myself, other young people are going to go through the same things. What am I here for? I think the first question that I asked was, what am I here for, and what am I going to be remembered with? Am I just going to be remembered with Lemoran Sinono being that young entrepreneur who was doing this company? And then do I also want to be remembered as the Lemohan Sinolo who advocated for the young people and who wanted to make changes for the young people that are coming from behind and want to do the same things that I'm supposed to be doing. So I just wanted to pave way for my fellow young entrepreneurs and make things better for them, build a proper environment for them. And I don't want young people in my country suffering the way I suffered or reaching the challenges that I've met, because it's not a good thing. It was bad. So that's the first thing that I say to myself. I don't want these people to suffer. I don't want people to face the challenges that I face. They're just challenges that can be fixed. And I say to myself, I can fix these things. So yeah, that's how I started this journey.